you're atypical person in this industry. So most people start with a little bit of money and experience. I come from the construction background, and my partner and I started with absolutely nothing. We didn't have any capital, any relationships, and kind of did it all ass backwards. So we figured out a lot of stuff the hard way. Sometimes I feel like the power of broke is coursing through our veins, and you know, on a lot of fronts, it's made things increasingly difficult, and on other fronts, it's forced us to be way more competitive and
Mhm.
way more innovative on ways of brokering good finance terms, looking for creative ways to architect deals, to work with individuals. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And,
Mhm.
we got almost 1,000 units in 2 years, and we've made a ton of mistakes failing forward, but I feel blessed for every mistake we made. And our growth has made us, made us into men that we want to increasingly grow and build upon.
I love that. I love the failing forward. It's similar to a phrase that we use a lot, which is failing your way to success.
Mm-hmm.
It's just an integral part of the process, and getting comfortable with micro failures and macro successes. We want to try and
Mm-hmm.
avoid macro failures as much as possible. Sometimes they're unavoidable, though.
That's why these guys are listening to you, right?
Yeah,
Find
I
good
mean,
people to surround yourself by, and you can hopefully avoid some of the massive
yes,
failures.
exactly. Some of my favorite failures are the ones that I did not actually commit. I can learn from other people, hopefully. So Justin, what were you doing before multifamily, before real estate, then that made you make that jump, that entrepreneurial jump to real estate?
I started off in extreme sports. I started off in hockey. I've
Nice.
always been big skier, love the mountains, love vertical. Got into motocross, and anything that goes really fast. And I needed something as I became more of a pencil pusher. Sorry, I'm behind a desk too, but as I became more of a pencil pusher, I needed thrill. I needed something that, really got me going. And surprisingly, this industry did that for me. And it's something I always wanted to do ever since I read the Purple Book. Everybody knows Robert Kiyosaki for the most part.
Mhm.
I became very interested in how to grow wealth in perpetuity. And it's become my new adrenaline sport. And, I say that lightly because a lot of people think of that adrenaline as taking risk that's unnecessary. And that's not the case at all. It's just like all sports, whether you're jumping out of a plane in a squirrel suit, coming close to the sides of mountains, everything is calculated. And the more you get to know people that do what we do and that do extreme sports, everything is extremely calculated down to the nth degree. And what seems risky for most is actually highly calculated, and just years of experience and failure that culminate into good returns in our case.
Mhm.
So this particular topic, Dan and I we recorded a podcast this weekend, and at the end we got talking on mindset, because it's a really critical component for both of us. It's something that we spend a lot of time thinking about. I'm curious, for you guys going around the table here, what have been some of the bigger failures that you guys have made that have been influential in your learning process?
Rodney?
Everybody,
Care to go first? Throw Rodney under the bus. You go first. We'll all judge exactly how big of a failure to share based on that.
So multifamily experience, when you get into a deal, for the most part, you're dealing with a lot of knowns, because you go into the deal, you've done your underwriting, you pretty well have a grasp on what's going to happen. At least that's the plan. But things can change along the way. And for me, I mean, I had a deal where it looked like a slam dunk, but we get down to 2 weeks before closing and we still have $1.2 million to raise before we have our closing money. And that was pretty tense. And so how we got to that, and some of this has to do with inexperience. I mean, there's no doubt there, but there were other people on the team that kind of got blindsided by this too. But there was conversation earlier on about our capital raising, and I think that probably there was some assumptions made there, and that I rested on, and because I rested on those assumptions, they didn't come to pass. We found ourselves in a predicament. So where before, I've been in management for years, and I know that if somebody's working for me, I have every right to go and ask them what their progress is and what their next attack is. And then we sit down and we team and we make sure that we have the boat moving in the right direction. And when I first got into multifamily, I felt like, because these guys weren't working for me and that we were team members, that I found it difficult to ask the hard questions. But I'm over that now. So
it sounds like there was a lack of having people be owners of certain processes. Even if everyone's equal, and having someone say, okay, this is you're the go-to guy for this, and everyone looked at each other as being lateral, and no one wanted to really try to tell other people what to do. That's what you're saying, right?
Exactly. I mean,
yeah.
If you're gonna have a deal, you're gonna have everybody that's gonna have a distinct role, and one person on the deal has to be lead. One person has to talk to everybody and find out where they are, and it's not a situation where you're trying to tell them what to do, because everybody's got their expertise. But at the same time, I think there's got to be a guy that's looking at all the plates that are spinning and make sure that they all stay in the air. Yeah. And if you don't, with a larger multifamily deal, things can get sideways in a hurry, and if you're not careful, it can get real expensive. And so my big learning experience out of that deal is to make sure you can do all the underwriting, you can make all your contacts, but the cash is still king. And if you don't have your money ducks lined up, things aren't going to go well.
It's all that theory of creating a cadence of accountability and setting clear expectations from the start, and saying who's responsible for what, who's accountable for what, and what's the cadence that we're going to check in with each other. I think that's something, Dan and I have a regular cadence of accountability. We sit down once a week and just kind of touch base on what the key things that we're working on, and if those balls are getting moved forward. And I think when it comes to mindset, it's really critical that you find an accountability buddy, somebody that can hold you accountable and have those conversations with, because when left to your own devices, when you're trying to make seismic mindset shifts, you tend to fall back on your old patterns of behavior. So if you have somebody there who has permission to call you out, that can be really, really powerful and accelerate your growth. So you just have to get comfortable having those awkward or hard conversations, saying, hey, Dan, did you get the thing done that you said you were going to get done?
Yep.
No, why not? What are we going to do to make sure it gets done? What's holding us?
You gotta
bring that back to full circle, because of the predicament you get yourself in, you as a person that maybe made the mistake needs to be open to taking criticism, being willing to admit that, hey, I made a mistake. What can I do to fix it the next time? And then move forward. Put that in your quiver of knowledge and move forward. Don't take it as don't take it personal, because it's business.
I think that could be especially hard for people who are newer with whatever their endeavor is as well, because I think a lot of people are going to be hesitant to let someone else peek under the hood if they're not entirely confident that they've got it all figured out yet. So getting that accountability buddy, whether it be a mentor or a partner, might be a tough sell for a lot of people out there, because they're like, I don't want someone to see what a mess it is I've got going on here. This is my first time doing this, whatever your business is. But, I can speak from experience. It really accelerates the progress if you let someone else take a peek under there, especially if they're like in a mentorship role and they've got years of experience on you. They'll point out what's wrong right away and also confirm what you're doing correct, which is going to give you a big confidence boost. So huge value in that, whether it's an accountability buddy or a mentor or a partner or whatever.
And to what Rodney's pointing out there, you have to be okay asking for help and realizing, like, if you're falling behind, your team is relying on you, and if you can't, for whatever reason, the time or the skills just aren't quite there, it's okay to ask for help. That's what the point of a team is to help compensate for that. So from my experience in my other businesses, we're a little bit more employee heavy than we are in real estate. So we have about 20 employees on the manufacturing side. And I would say 90% of the problems we encounter are inevitably people problems, whether that's communication or clear expectations. And so it's never going to go away. You're going to have to figure out how to work well regardless and find solutions with people, because the problems aren't going to go away.
So one of the things you guys have mentioned a lot here, I think that is really important for your listeners, is ego. And when you get into this, you have to set your ego aside if you're going to have an entrepreneurial mindset. It's team, it's partners, and it's when you're not sure, asking for help instead of resting on your laurels or thinking that you're going to figure it out. Our timelines are too compressed. That's why we have a team. This is a team sport, and it's okay to go to your team members and show a little bit of weakness and say, hey guys, I thought I had this wrapped up, but I'm really lacking in this area. We got X amount of time left. Who can I contact that can help us get over this hump? And what's it going to take? And sometimes there's easy ways to make that happen, and sometimes it hurts to make it happen, but that's the lesson. And I think when you guys talk about mindset, the lesson is that this is a long game. So don't let the short-term errors, issues, problems get in the way of the longer mentality. So I had something happen very much like Rodney. I'm not going to go down the multifamily route because he did, so I'll step aside. I went after a development deal, and I thought I brought on all the right team members. I was very clear. I thought I was very clear that I didn't know how to underwrite a deal. I understood construction very well, but I didn't know how to underwrite a deal. There's a lot of different things that go into a construction deal. Especially this one was kind of a wild one because there's an existing property that we're going to add on to. And there was a lot of moving parts, and we let ourselves get too deep without fully understanding where everybody was and asking for the help earlier on from the right people. And I, like Rodney, early on, rested on my assumptions of what people said they were going to do instead of asking that hard question. And one of our good friends that's in our circle had $140,000 on the line, and we lost the deal. And I had to go out and borrow that money, and I paid him back because it's not his responsibility, it was mine. And that's another lesson is, when you're the business owner, you may not think it's your fault. You may not believe that you are completely at fault, but ultimately there's only one driving mechanism behind that circle, and it's you if you're the business leader. And you can't point at anybody else in the group because you need to point at yourself. Lesson learned. It was an expensive lesson. It was expensive college tuition on that one, but way smarter for it. Learned a tremendous amount from those lessons, and there's no room for that selfish pride in this industry. There's good, hard due diligence, and get to know the people you're going into business with. Because let's face it, guys, if you're going into business with someone in these deals, it's a marriage. Most marriages don't last 10 years. And we're getting into deals with people for 5, 10 plus years. We need to know more about them. Sometimes we make that mistake.
Yeah, I wanted to go back when you were talking about ego. It made me think of Dan, and not because Dan's egotistical, not at all.
I love that face.
Yeah, Dan's like, where's this gonna go? But Dan talks about the early days of your investing career and operating from that kind of I'm a mentality. So I know that you have a little bit here to share too.
Yeah, no, I can relate to that quite a bit, because the whole first year I was in the business was I unintentionally pretty ego driven. I wanted to be the one to do everything so I could take full credit and say, this was all me. I built this, no partners, no nothing. And, fast forward a year later, I look back and realize, what a relationship business real estate is, and how much quicker I could have grown, and how much better I could have done had I been open to taking on partners. And the part that kind of like solidified it for me was, I do a lot of reading on a bunch of different stuff, but I like to read biographies on really successful people, and reading like Shoe Dog and Grinding It Out and Made in America, and like all these books about these big, really successful guys. Like they all had partners building these really epic businesses and brands, but like nobody discounts Steve Jobs for having a partner and says, oh, it was him and Steve Wozniak. It was, it wasn't just Steve Jobs. Like no one says that, So I would much rather be a partner in something really big and amazing than just a sole proprietor in a pretty decent little business. Right. So I had that kind of realization after about the first 12 months. Things worked out, but I just realized I just did things not as efficiently as I could have because of that ego. It's a tricky guy.
It was super tricky. It's that phrase, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And realizing you can move really quick on your own, but at some point the wheels just kind of fall off. Your growth is just trapped. You can only
especially in real estate too, because you get into a deal and maybe you can do one or two in a year with your own capital, but unless you've got just a huge stack of capital, you're going to run out of your own powder pretty soon. And then what, do you wait a couple of years for things to appreciate, to refi, and then reload? I realized real quickly that my growth was going to be really stunted if I didn't open things up to taking investors and then, taking on partners to help fill in the blanks in my skill set. So
there's a great book I'll recommend here, which is Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday. And it's kind of around Stoic philosophy, but really talking about how getting out of our own way is one of the first hurdles of developing a successful mindset. And then tying into what Justin was talking about in terms of you as the owner of the business, you have total accountability for anything that goes wrong, right? In Rodney's instance, even if he wasn't the point person, it's better for you to operate from the position of I'm accountable for the ultimate success of this deal. And if everybody is coming in with 100% extreme ownership over their role and of the success of the deal, then it's going to be much more likely to actually succeed.
Yeah, I think that's something that really separates really successful entrepreneurs from basically everybody else, is the ability to take responsibility almost like a parent does for their child, where like you need to be able to pick up everybody else's slack and be okay with it and not defer responsibility. Because that's going to be essential. If you're the one running the show, you're going to have to compensate for other people's shortcomings. And I think that's the part that probably a lot of people struggle with, or one of the parts a lot of people struggle with, because I think most people just don't like taking responsibility for things. And they like to say, oh, this didn't work out because of XYZ. But like any successful entrepreneur doesn't let XYZ happen. Like they step in front of it and they fix it regardless of who should have stepped in front of it and fixed it.
Exactly.
Yeah, one of the things I find with entrepreneurs and business people and in real estate in particular is like this idea that even if it's not really your fault, like COVID-19, not your fault, there's not much anybody in this room could really do about it, but how you react to it, if you claim ownership of it, you're put in a position of power. You can actually do something rather than just blaming an external force or blaming somebody else. So they didn't do their part of the job. That's a powerless position. You can't move forward from there. That's just an excuse.
Yeah, you're basically sacrificing any control you have. When something's not your fault, you sacrifice the ability to fix it because you basically just tell yourself either consciously or subconsciously, it's out of my hands and there's nothing I can do. But the type of person who takes ownership recognizes that they can still fix it, and they usually do. It's funny how that works.
And one thing I noticed for a lot of individuals in their early years of building anything and early years of success, people don't realize how many people are watching. We all think, to Rodney's in my case, when we first started raising money, it's like, oh, these people aren't talking to me, so they must not be interested. No, it's quite the contrary. A lot of these people are extremely interested. They're just cautious. They've been burned. Something's happened in their past. So as we move forward, people are watching how we operate. And when, to Anthony and to Dan, to both of your points, when you take that responsibility in a situation where most people are saying, hey, it's not my fault, it's COVID. No, it's my responsibility to run my portfolio in any scenario. So guys, here's what we're doing. We understand that we can't completely control this. We understand we don't have a crystal ball, but here are the things we're doing. Here are the actions we're taking to move forward. Here's how we're going to try and deliver through these times. That accountability shows so much strength in a person and a team to take that responsibility and to take the right steps and move forward. And people would be surprised over time how many people fall in after large events like this take place because they're watching. And so many times I've had key investors or really large groups that have been watching for years in some cases. And one event takes place, and the way you handle that, they give you a call. And it's like, hey, I think we're ready to do something together. Let's talk.
Yeah.
And
that's true. Crazy. I mean, everyone does well in a strong market, right? It's easy. You can almost throw a dart at a board, buy something, and if it's a strong market, unless you're completely incompetent, it's probably going to go halfway decent for you. So it's these times where it becomes really clear who the rock stars are and who the weak links are. So that's kind of why I've been, I don't want to say I'm excited about such a negative circumstance, but I do see it as one big opportunity because a lot of people are going to get shaken out. There's going to be, unfortunately for them, but fortunately for us, there's going to be opportunities to pop up because of it. So, that's kind of my approach to just about anything. When anything happens negative, my first thought is to just try to figure out where is there an opportunity here instead of focusing on all the negative stuff that's going on. So,
Dan, I think there could be a whole separate call or event structured around that one thought.
Yeah,
is the main players never look at an obstacle as a problem. They always try to find an opportunity. This is going to be a tremendous opportunity. People are saying people are losing jobs. The logistic industry is going nuts right now. People are hiring like it's going out of style. People are worried about different sectors while other sectors are absolutely exploding. There's so much opportunity that can come from, don't discount some of the doom and gloom, because that in part gives you information to build a good, concise plan from, but don't concentrate on the doom and gloom. Look towards the opportunities.
Yeah, I think it just comes down to having a positive mindset versus a negative one. Some people default to the negative, and you can fix that, right? You can retrain your brain to be more positive, but I guess my wife might think I'm a pessimist just because I tend to be conservative when assessing risk, but in reality, I'm always looking for opportunities. So, but I didn't used to be like that. Honestly, when I was younger, I used to be the complete opposite. I was the guy who would focus on the negative and get caught up in, feeling down when things didn't go my way. But now I just look, to see where there's an opportunity, or to like the point we were talking about before with those expensive lessons, like those biggest mistakes we've made. I don't get down on that kind of stuff anymore, just because I know that I can go back and I can analyze the mistake that was made and figure out what can I fix to make sure that didn't happen again. And then I can use that as learning experience. I know that next time I'm going to be better, right? Whatever it was, whatever business it's in. So just having a positive mindset, I think.
This reminds me of the Winston Churchill quote, which is the pessimist sees difficulty in every opportunity, and the optimist sees opportunity in every difficulty. So whatever it is that you're looking for, you're going to find it. If you're looking for an excuse and an obstacle, you're going to find that. If you're looking for an opportunity, you're going to find that too. And this is actually going to be a really good pausing point. We have another guest to bring in, Jerome Myers. And I think this is a good pausing point because Jerome, from the content that I've seen of him online, is very positive, very uplifting.
Packing them in here.
Yeah. So I think, Jerome, welcome.
Hello.
I think you're going to be able to add some great value.
What's going on?
Killing it. I don't know if I can add value or not.
Definitely you can. I believe in you. I believe. So Jerome, why don't you go ahead and quick introduce yourself to everybody? Who are you?
Yeah, man. So I'm a corporate America dropout. Before leaving corporate America in 2016, I built a business, $20 million revenue. We went from 0 or 2 employees to 175 in about 8 months. And we're making about 30% profit. I got the opportunity to lay people off 2 years in a row. Second time I had to do that, I said, I'm done with this. And so I left, started flipping houses, and moved on to multifamily. And so we've taken an approach, instead of syndicating, we do joint ventures. Kind of, I think it was Justin making the point of, most marriages don't make it 10 years, right? And so we really want to get to know our partners. The majority of folks that we've worked with in the past, I've known from either high school or college, or we've been on boards, but, we've got a track record of 10 years or more. I know their wives, I know their sons and daughters. And, I like syndications because it allows you to do really cool deals. I just left a meetup, and the speaker there was talking about he's closing his second $50+ million deal in less than
That's pretty sexy.
Right. It's really impressive. Both of them in the Carolinas. And you're not going to do that in a joint venture unless you've got a really, really wealthy partner. But, we like the smaller deals. We feel like there's a lot of guru groups around the country who are pursuing those 100-unit plus deals. And we're going for 100 units or less. And we're taking those down and competing with doctors and dentists and attorneys who have day jobs and trying to do it at nighttime. And we feel like our strategic advantage is having a full-time operator in the space, evaluating the deals. And so
that's awesome.
Jerome, I got a question for you, because I love guys like you, man, just straight hustlers. And I love it. Going from nothing to that many millions of dollars and bringing on that many employees, dude, you had to have some gnarly problems with systems and getting stuff up and running and putting something in place that didn't work and having to scrap it and start all over again. This whole thing's about cultivating a mindset, dude. That has to knock you off at your knees sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, the great part about going through that experience for those 2 years was I didn't have to take the pay cut, right? A lot of people go and start building their own thing, and you quickly realize, hey, I don't have the same revenue as I did coming in the door as I did when I had a job. And it's not instant turnaround, right? I think a lot of people come into investing expecting to make money right away. It's an investment because it takes some time for the money to come back. It's not like selling a widget. And so if you're not prepared for that, and you're having the mental hurdles that you got to overcome while you're building something and it's not working, and you don't know why it's not working, and you got to get up every day and smile and try it again. And you see your bank account dwindling and you're like, I don't know how much longer I'm gonna last. I don't have that much runway. Something's got to work. You just got to be in a great solid place, and you got to do something healthy to deal with the stress. And for me, I think that's the most important thing. It's unfortunate, but a lot of people end up drinking or smoking or doing other things that are not healthy. And, if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. And so we got to find some healthy habit. And so my healthy habit, and sometimes my lady asks me if it's really healthy, is getting up and walking 6 miles each day. Right. And I get one thing done. One thing. I'm not doing it for time. I'm not doing it for anything other than distance. And if it takes me 2 hours, it takes me 2 hours. If it takes me an hour and a half, it takes me an hour and a half. But I got that one thing done. That's an accomplishment for the day. And then I just try to roll that into something else.
Yeah. I love that you mentioned that, because that's one of the main things I try to instill in people as well. Is like, we're so used to getting immediate gratification these days with everything being on demand, and people, and I've worked with as a nutrition coach as well. So I know that, like, making money and either gaining weight or losing weight, whatever you're trying to do, like, those things still take time. They're not as quick as Netflix or Amazon. Like, those things you still have to put in the work, and it's going to take months or years before you actually see some benefit. So what I try to recommend people do is they, instead of trying to focus on, let's say you're investing, right? So you're going to try to look at your P&L to see how you're progressing, or if it's weight loss, you're going to try to look at the scale. Like, instead of looking at that to try to judge your success, what you want to do is break down your long-term goal into smaller, manageable micro goals, and then judge your success on whether or not you're knocking out those little incremental steps. And then the results will materialize, whether you're trying to make money, lose weight, gain weight, whatever. That'll work itself out, but it's going to take a long time before those results materialize. And if you don't get any kind of gratification, you're going to get burnt out. And that's why people just give up on things so fast. But if you get up and you do your walk, boom, you just accomplished something, you checked it off your list. Now you got some momentum. Now you're motivated. And if you do that with investing too, like, maybe it's just contact these brokers or go to this many meetup groups. Like, if you have those as your goals, then you get to check those off as done, successful. That's motivating. You feel great. Even if you didn't get a deal and make $1 million, like, you still took the steps. And as long as you're looking at just taking those steps as what you need to be doing and judging yourself off of that, based off, instead of saying, oh, I'll be successful when I make $1 million. Like, I think that's a much better mindset.
Yeah. What I will say, so I'm a Six Sigma guy, right? I did a bunch of process improvement in my day, and it was always focusing on the inputs. And if you control the inputs, then the outputs are kind of predetermined. The thing with entrepreneurship that I learned the hard way is you're experimenting, right? So that process that I was fixing in the past doesn't exist when I show up today. And so now I'm building the process, trying to create a result, not knowing if the inputs that I'm putting in are going to yield the result that I want. And, trying to reverse engineer that can get extremely frustrating, because you don't know what the end is going to be. You know what you desire, but actually knowing if what you're doing today is going to get you what you want in the future.
Yeah.
Absolutely
frustrating.
frustrating.
No, I had the same thing with, I think we chatted about this right before you hopped on, but like, my first year was, me trying to do everything on my own. And I think that's part of the value of bringing in partners or mentors or coaches, is you get someone to really accelerate that learning curve and help you define those inputs sooner, instead of having to do the trial and error thing yourself. And everyone's going to have to do it, whether it's with themselves or with a partner or something. But if you did it yourself, it might take 1 to 2 years. If you do it with a partner or a mentor, you might be able to cut that learning curve down to like 6 months. So I think that piece is huge.
So I'm the walk-in testimony for School of Hard Knocks, right? Like, I didn't do any coaching programs. I did podcasts and YouTube, baby. And it was efficient and effective way to do it. And
it works. It works. That's my default, just because I'm typically pretty introverted. And like I mentioned before, I used to have the ego of saying I wanted to take credit for everything and say I did everything. I never asked for help. But lately, last year and a half or so, I've learned to embrace, the networking aspect of real estate. And so it's really real estate that's made me a much more social being with this kind of stuff, because typically I was just so fixated on just doing it all myself so I could say I did it. But
yeah,
at the end of the day, it doesn't matter.
I'm just
Jerome, I love
curious.
that you come from a Six Sigma background. So you're probably familiar, and what you're really talking about there is like the difference between lead and lag measures. And what Dan's talking about is the difference between like process goals versus outcome goals.
Yeah.
And those outcome goals they're the lag measures. You only get to measure them after the fact. So if your goal is to lose 10 pounds, well, you only get to weigh yourself once a month. And if you hit it, great. If you didn't, well, that's not something that you can benchmark off of. So what you're really looking to do is to control those lead measures, those inputs, and saying, okay, well, if I show up every day and I walk 6 miles a day, then I think that's going to lead to losing 10 pounds. And if I show up, then at the end of the month, we look and say, did I show up 30 days out of 30? Great. Did I hit my goal of losing 10 pounds? No. Okay, well, maybe this wasn't actually the right lead measure then. And you have to be comfortable pivoting and looking at the metrics and saying, we thought this was going to move the needle. It didn't. Is this a time thing? Do we need to give it more time? Are we being impatient? Or is it actually not as effective as what we thought it was going to be? And so really zeroing in and focusing on those processes rather than the outcomes.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that, because you're a bunch of guys that are go-getters. You mentioned an interesting word there, in patience with ourselves. We all,
That's hard, right?
oh my God, we all have a mentality from this short conversation of, this isn't good enough. What do I need to change to make it better? How come I can't take it that next step? What do I need to do? All right, 5 hours isn't working. Maybe put 10, 15, 18. And I realized for the first time during COVID, funny enough, I've never taken a step back. And sometimes it's not about going harder, faster. Yes, I started this by burning the boat and never looking back. There was no boat to get off the island. I either survived or died, period, end of sentence. But after 2.5 years, I never took a second to step back and say, all right, look at everything we've done. What have we done good? I mean, we had small moments in time, but I'm talking a really deep analysis of, hey, what happened? And what processes can we change? What things did we do exceedingly well on? What things could we change? What things were self-indulgent? What things cannibalized ourselves? And really take a look at all the systems and all the people and all the stuff that's going on, and actually have the time to do that. Because I mean, in all of our worlds, it's full throttle. Give her the onion, don't look back. And you keep doing and doing and doing and doing and doing and making decisions in the heat of the moment. And I believe that this pandemic gave people a second to reset, a second to look at our families and go, is what I'm doing in business right for me and my family? Is how I'm addressing my business right? And I think, at least for me, that I was going so hard that I didn't really take as much time to look at the whole picture. I was worried about the next deal, how many dollars short I was, what's the next metric I need to hit, why these people aren't calling me back, what's going on with my deals, who do I need to talk to get that next construction step done so that I can deliver for my investors. And this is the first time since everything started where I've got to step back and have a little bit of time for me and my family and go, how does this all fit? I'm curious how all you guys are dealing with that.
Yeah, I think it's really important that you brought that up, because I jotted some notes down in preparation for this. And one of the notes I put down, trying to think of like, okay, how to, what can we talk about with respect to mindset and entrepreneurs that would be valuable? And one of the things I jotted down was to create goals for yourself that are actually going to make you happy, and not goals that society or the media tells you should have, right? So we're talking about investing, we're talking about real estate. So naturally people are thinking unit count, net worth, a lot of money. Like, I think it's a good practice for people to actually think about, okay, what's really going to make me happy? And I think a good way to do that is to think about, the way end of your life. Like, where do you want to be? What do you want it to look like? And what's really important there? What's that like 95-year-old version of you going to want you to do today. And 9 times out of 10, it's not like make as much money as possible. So it might be, maybe I just want to have time freedom so I can spend a lot of time with my family. So really, maybe your goal shouldn't be to have as many units as possible or to make as much money as possible. Maybe it's to create a business that just lets you have more time with your family. So I think part of having a finely tuned entrepreneurial mindset is to make sure your goals are actually goals for you that are going to make you happy, and make sure that's what you're shooting for, not just trying to get more because more is better, but create a lifestyle that's really going to make you happy. Because I bet for a lot of people it's not going to be to have Ken McElroy's 15,000 units or have a net worth of $2 billion. It's probably going to be time, be my guess. And you don't really need a huge portfolio for that, really.
Time and where you're investing. So people ask me, why Jacksonville, Florida? Why Memphis, Tennessee? I met my wife in Tennessee. I love Tennessee. I want to spend more time there. It just happens to be a great market. So I spend a lot of time there and get to, invest in that market. Jacksonville, Florida, my grandparents are there. I don't know how long the good Lord's going to leave them on this earth. I want to spend as much time as I can down there. Yep. I'm going down there in 3 weeks to spend a week down there. I'm going to live in their place and do business. So it changes your mentality on how you look at a market and how you look at the metrics. People thought Jacksonville was a tough market to get into. I didn't feel it was, because it was an act of passion. I knew I was going to get into that market, and it didn't matter how many hours, how many days, or how many people I had to talk to. It was just something that was inevitable, because I wanted to be around my family. And my next goal is going to be Colorado. Colorado's a super hot market. Most people don't think that you can get into that market. I freaking love to ski. So I don't care what it takes. I'm going to go there. I'm going to pound the pavement for a week and then hit the slopes, and all that will melt away.
Yeah, I love it.
I think that's what it's about.
Yeah, you got to have a really good why, and it's not just money. You got to have another reason to get up and do it every morning, because that's really what's gonna, get you to do the stuff on the days where you don't really feel like it. And this came up a lot when I was a nutrition coach as well. Like those days where you don't want to get up and work out, or you don't want to eat right, like you can kick the can down the road because, okay, I'll just, lose a couple pounds next week or whatever. But if your reason is to lose weight or get healthier is because you want to be able to walk your daughter down the aisle at her wedding, or you want to be there to see your grandkids, like that'll get you moving more than just trying to look better on the beach. So
the one thing you brought up, the whole why thing, Simon Sinek really harps on that. And that his whole, find your why is a great talk, because having goals is good, but like we've said before, having the right goals and why you're doing it, because what you just said, walking your daughter down the aisle, that's your why. And that's not your goal, and your goal is going to be meaningless if you don't have a why.
Yeah. If you don't have a good why, you're gonna tap out. If you're just in real estate to try to make as much money as possible, you're not going to put up with all the BS that we have to put up with. Like you've got to actually be, passionate about the business, right? So that was another thing I noted in my little notes coming into this, is like you've got to really love the process of whatever it is you're doing.
And Dan, that's so important, because people see through BS. And if it's not authentic and genuine, my God, you're not fooling anybody.
Yeah.
So Apple is not the best company in the world. It doesn't have the best technology. A lot of the technology that's in an Apple computer is in all the other ones. But why do people fall behind them? Because they're passionate. They found something in Apple that they believe in, and they invest in that product because they believe in it. Harley Davidson and so many others out there, people get behind it. And us as real estate professionals need to look at our business model and say, are we being authentic enough? Because there's a lot of people that say, all right, I need all my investors to be really excited about me. No, some of them are going to hate your freaking guts. There's lots of people that aren't going to like you, bro. Just get over it.
It's okay.
But the ones, it is. But the ones who like you, love you. And the ones who believe in what you're doing are going to be there through everything. So
Yeah.
stop worrying about pleasing people. And that is some of the toughest things entrepreneurs need to worry about as we're building our businesses, is you cannot be a people pleaser.
Mhm.
You need to do what you think is right, to Dan's point, and do it for the right reasons. And people will follow you in droves because they believe in you.
Yeah.
I'm curious, Dan, you said something there that is intriguing to me, which is you have to love the process.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of things that we have to do in our businesses, even though we might love what we do most of the time. There's going to be some things that we don't love.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
like using the weight loss example or the nutrition example, you're going to have to suck it up at some point and do some things you don't want to do. Do you guys have tips or tricks or advice for how do you fall in love with the process of those things that you might not really enjoy doing all that much? Is that possible, or is that just something you have to cultivate discipline to overcome?
Virtual assistants. Just outsource it.
No, I do think you have to do things you don't like, right? Like, I don't enjoy 6 miles. Like, some people could get okay with a mile, right? But when you're 5 miles in and it's like, man, like I've just committed to it. It's like you got to go through it, and you have to go through it, and only you can do that, right? There's a ton of stuff in your business that you don't need to do. You can outsource them, to Dan's point. But there are going to be some things that you absolutely have to do, and you're the only one that can do it.
Mhm.
And
Well, I think,
go ahead.
sorry. Well, I was just going to say that, like, the 6 mile thing you said, I think you like the feeling you get right after it, right?
The runner's high.
Yeah. Like you like the accomplishment of having done it, even if the first couple miles or maybe all 6 miles weren't great. But like, I'm sure the gratification you get afterwards, knowing that you've accomplished it, is gratifying. So you might not want to do it, but you do like the feeling of having accomplished it after the fact, right?
At times I do. But I think you're making a very poignant point. And the point is, you've got to be willing to go through the process in order to get the result. I think we have spent so much time, and it's already come up in this conversation once. We spent so much time being able to microwave everything that people forgot about crock pots, they forgot about ovens, and they just want to put it in the microwave and get that instant gratification. And everything isn't built that way. And I know for me, you got the triangle, right? Know, like, and trust. If people don't know who you are, they can't decide whether or not they like or trust you. And I come from a place where you don't want anybody to know who you are. You want to make your money and you want to disappear. Like, that's the game. But if you're doing deals and if you're going to do big deals, you need people who know who you are so that they can get to like you and trust you, so that they're interested in partnering with you. And I mean, if you're doing things the right way, back to Justin's point, like, you can't fake that. They're going to see through you. Social media has made it such that if people don't know who you are, if they can't check you out independently, they're not going to want to partner with you. They're not going to want to do business with you. And I don't know if it's fair or not, but everybody's turned into a celebrity for that group of people. And that's kind of what you want for your Raven fans, right? You guys
Locally famous.
A group of Raven fans. They need to know who you are. If you listen to any of the 30 podcasts I did last year, I tell the same story over and over and over again. And it's just my truth.
Dan, you mentioned something there that is really close to my heart, which is, so I'm an author. I've written and published 12 novels, and I hate writing, but I love having written. And there's like a big distinction there, right? And it's really hard sometimes to put your butt in the chair. And this is a thing that a lot of aspiring authors really struggle with, is really putting your butt in the chair and putting in the time, because that's the only way that you really bang out a book, is just day after day, just grinding it out. And for me to fall in love with the process is less about sometimes the process itself and more about the type of person that I'm becoming or showing myself to be by actually following through and doing that action. So I can't remember who it is. I think it's maybe James Clear in Atomic Habits, where he talks about every day when you do an activity or perform a habit, it's like you're casting a vote for the type of person that you would like to become. right? It's maybe not the person you are right now, but it's casting another vote. And if you do that day in, day out, then that can be maybe part of the process that you're falling in love with, is saying, this is growing me into the person that I one day hope to be.
I think my comment about oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Dan.
I was gonna say, I think my comment about the 6 miles and liking to feel it afterwards is probably just me like kind of projecting my own tendencies onto other people. Like, I don't know if everyone else likes this kind of stuff, but personally, I enjoy putting myself through things that are difficult because of the feeling of accomplishing them after the fact. So like the stuff that I don't like to do in the business, I do it because I know how good I'm going to feel after I've knocked it off and checked it off the list. So, to answer Anthony's question, like, how do you guys make yourself do that stuff? That's my technique. I think about how I'm going to feel after I've checked that off my list. And it feels good to do things that are difficult and to do things that I don't like but need to be done, because I know it moves the needle forward as far as the bigger picture is concerned. I'm not sure what other people's strategies are, but that's my strategy. I think about the post-task feeling.
I think that you hit the nail on your head in your own way, and it's the same for everybody. It's just called something different. So for me, there's parts of the process that give me highs. Yeah. And just like I'm an action junkie, I would love to be jumping out of a plane, or I'd love to be doing, things that really spike my adrenaline. For me in the process, it's the creationism. That's why I like the heavy value add. I like taking something that people look at and it makes them feel a certain way. It draws them down. They don't feel like they want to bring their families home, and putting my team's ideas into that. And it doesn't matter whether it's an A, B, C, D property. If you put that level of creativity in a little bit more than the next guy, I can make a D property look and feel like an A property for those tenants that are going in there. And I just had a long talk with my property management group, because they're missing little things. And to them, it's not necessarily a significant thing because of the tenant base that we're marketing to. And I had to say, wait a second, it doesn't matter who we're marketing to. It's what we're marketing. And what we're marketing is our name. And it might not make sense to you to tape that trim and to have paint halfway up, the side of the trim, because those people might not notice it. But I look at people across the board, and it doesn't matter what they notice or don't notice. Eventually they will. And what most people don't think is sooner or later, they're going to be sitting on the pot and they're going to be looking around at the molding, at stuff, and they're going to go, wow, that's terrible. And the people that take the time, and it's not a lot of time, it's not a lot of money, it's minutes and seconds in some cases, it's tape over the sockets instead of blasting over them. It's little things that people notice over time that make you different. And I think as an entrepreneur, it's all about doing little things or making little steps in the right direction. And to your point, Dan, that's my high. It's doing things different, and when you're done and you could walk in, you have that overwhelming sense of pride that you made something happen, and that's a high that no one can take from you.
Yeah. Well, that's why Apple's such a addictive company, right? Because you have, Steve Jobs, who's just a complete perfectionist that would just gripe over every little single thing that everyone else was like, does this really matter? And like, yeah, it does. Like, that's why Apple's Apple, right? Because of those little things that most other companies say, it's good enough. Like, they go that extra step and they've got a raving fan base.
This reminds me of what Tony Robbins talks about, of raising your standards and turning your shoulds into musts, right? It's saying, should we paint the entire trim? Well, yeah, we should paint the entire trim, and changing that to saying, no, we must do that, because the musts get done and the shoulds just kind of get pushed aside. And Apple's a company that sets very firm musts for themselves. And as a result, their standards much higher than some of the competitors. And that really stands out over, a long enough period. As Justin's pointing out, people notice, that maybe not immediately, but on a long enough time frame, they definitely do. And if nothing else, you notice. And the act of just putting in that little extra work every single day, starts to compound over time, and you just get so much better than your previous self, if that's the benchmark that you're using, or competitors, if that's your benchmark.
Well, I think Dan's language is the best for the broadest audience. If you do 5 more push-ups every day than everybody else, are you going to notice it next week? Maybe not. You're probably still going to hurt like hell. But if you do 5 more for 5 years, you're going to be a beast.
Yeah.
And it's just about that much more all the time.
Yeah. I say it all the time. Those small, consistent efforts make the difference, right? Those little things that you do on a regular basis every day yield the biggest results. I think Bruce Lee had a quote, and I'm going to butcher it, but it was something like, I fear not the man who practices 1,000 kicks. I fear the man who practices 1 kick 1,000 times, right? So it's like that consistent effort, like putting in the work over time, day in and day out. That's the stuff that really moves the needle. Even if they're just little mini things done every day incrementally for long periods of time, yield amazing results. I think Anthony had a great strategy with his morning routine. We talked about that on a podcast a while ago. He'll explain it better than me, but I think one thing was like, you want to learn a new skill, and so you devote, what is it, like 20 minutes every morning?
15.
That's it.
So yeah,
15.
every morning my routine is, meditate for 20 minutes, read a book for 10 minutes, study something for 15 minutes. Right now that's Japanese, and then 15 minutes of some skill. So that could be Excel, it could be underwriting, it could be learning Photoshop, and trying to say, this month I'm going to tackle this little skill and just try and get a little bit better at it. And it doesn't have to be a lot of time. 10, 15 minutes a day really adds up over the course of 3, 4, 5 months. You look back and you're like, oh, I've done hours of work here.
7.5 hours a month for each 15-minute thing. Like if that's 15 minutes of studying Excel, by a month you're 7.5 hours in. Right? That's a lot of Excel.
So guys, we're coming up just over an hour here, so I don't want to keep you guys all night long. This is a fantastic conversation, and I'm really enjoying it. But I'm curious, before I let you guys go, how do we cultivate a positive mindset? What are some of the things that you found successful in your personal journey that have been really helpful?
I think extreme ownership is the first thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
I created a situation where the things happen for you, and then figuring out what you can do with the pieces that you have. I call it playing solitary. What's the next logical step that you can do to get closer to the mission that you're working on? And as long as you feel like you have a next step, it's pretty easy to get excited about that. I get the opportunity to do this right now. And it doesn't matter about any of the other stuff. I can do this now. And then when I get to that place, I can go do something else because it'll create other opportunities for me. I think it's easy. And I think the spiral that a lot of people have is, all right, one thing went wrong. Like you ask somebody if they had a bad day, or they tell you they had a bad day, and they tell you about one thing that happened. And that one thing that happened took 30 seconds, right? And so now their whole day is bad because of one 30-second interaction. Like, of course, there are things that aren't perfect, but what about the other 23 hours and 59 minutes that were in the day? Like we get lost on that stuff. So I think it's super important to have that extreme ownership, and then make sure that things are happening for you. And then, just taking action with the cards that you have in front of you.
Yeah. I'm going to kind of piggyback on that one. I know that it's human nature to focus on problems and fires, and we all tend to do this, and I'm more guilty of this than anybody. But a good practice to get into for people to really cultivate a positive mindset so that you're seeing opportunities is to, on a daily basis, write down all of your wins for the day so that you remember them, because most of the time people don't. And this gets triggered because my wife used to ask me every night when we went to bed, like, what was the best part of your day? And then I always realized that I'd spent the entire day thinking about problems, and I had to sit there and think, what was the best part? Oh yeah, this stuff. So like make a conscious effort to actually write down all of your wins, and then also make a conscious effort to write down everything you're grateful for. So it might not be wins, but it just might be things that are good in your life. that you want to express some gratitude for. And like doing that on a daily basis, either in the morning or at night, is really going to keep your head in a pretty good spot, I think.
Yeah. And to comment on that, it's, when you do have those moments where things don't work right, don't dwell on them. Make a note of it, correct your course or your action, and let it go in the past. Don't. So in other words, don't forget the lesson that you learned, but also don't dwell on the issue, because I think people can get hung up on the issue itself. And so correct the issue, the problem, the course, and then focus forward and let that go in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Love it. Justin, do you have any parting wisdom for us?
Just consistent education. People
I love it.
that don't do it often don't realize the wisdom and the positivity that they're missing. All of these books that are written by people who have been there, done that. When you're having a challenging day, when you're dealing with a challenging moment in life, to hear somebody else that's dealt with that moment and hear some of their positive spins or ways that they've dealt with it, it reminds us, to Dan, your point, it reminds us there's so much beauty in the road that we overlook because we're too concentrated at the focus on the end. It's the path, the journey, that's the beauty. Stop and smell the roses. And sometimes just reading and educating yourself relaxes your mind enough, because you're concentrating on something else other than the problems in your life, to open your mind, to smell the roses, to take in that new piece of information, to learn something new that makes you smile, or to have the wife that, points out the beauty of life. I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah. I think one more thing I want to throw in for the end is just a tip for everybody who's watching this, that you should start meditating. Just do it. Takes like 2 minutes. It's a game changer if you actually make a habit out of it.
Yep. Find silence
and be grateful. Because even in this COVID moment, we talked about this before. Be grateful for the time that you have with your family. Be grateful for the time that you have to expound on your education, and be grateful for having a house, and there are so many positive things that you can focus in on, that like what you were saying, Dan, we can get lost in the moment of what went wrong and forget about that we are fortunate. And even if I lost my house tomorrow, I would still be grateful that I had my life, my wife, my kids. There's a lot of things to be grateful for.
Be able to breathe, be able to walk. The one thing I'll add on the back of Justin's, because we brought this up earlier, but he said stop and smell the roses, right? And that goes back to the process. Even if there's something hard happening in the process, enjoy it. We focus on getting to the result and checking it off the list, and we miss the whole thing. And it's kind of like, you got a begin date and an end date on your tombstone, but it's all about the dash, right? Everything, all that you're remembered for is in the dash. And
love it.
Over that, they only want to know the beginning and the end. And there's so much beauty there. And, I think we tend to emulate the outcome. We want, somebody's wealthy and they buy a jet, right? I just saw somebody on the other meetup, and they were from Grant Cardone's organization. People want to go buy a jet. Well, why do you want a jet? Is it so that you can spend more time with your family? Or so what are you going to go do in order to be able to spend more time with your family? Why not just spend more time with your family like right now? Like, what's keeping you from doing it? And so the process is everything, guys. And one last thing on the money piece. Money's like air. You only care about the money when you don't have it. It doesn't matter until you need it to go do something else. And I think we miss that so frequently. We don't appreciate the air. And Rodney, this is perfect for what you were saying. Like, be grateful for the air you can breathe. Be grateful for the money that you do have. And I mean, it gets so simple. And I think we make it really complicated for no reason.
Yeah.
I just got done reading a good book. I'd like if some of your listeners would check it out. Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Joe Dispenza. He talks about the power of meditation, the power of the here and now, and he actually shows scientifically what that does for your body and how focusing. And there's been so many books over centuries that have shown you the power of focus. So if you do what Dan does and take 5 minutes every day, morning, night, and just shut the world off and focus on you, there is vibrations out there. You do attract things to yourself, and it's all about you. You need to be in the right frame of mind, and taking what Dan says and running with it, I think, is absolutely important.
Yeah, every successful person out there meditates. If you read about them, all the big guys who everyone's obsessed with, they do it. So there's something there.
Yeah, and they might not necessarily call it meditation per se. For some people that might be prayer, for some people that might just be silence. I think, whatever you call it, however you manifest it, it's about finding silence and like what Jerome's saying there, stopping to smell the roses and focusing on the process and trying your best to fall in love with that and realize that this is the journey right now. This right here, there is no outcome. That's a hypothetical future date. Doesn't exist yet. All you have is this moment. So make the most of it. And guys, this was a fantastic conversation. I really appreciate all of you taking some time out of your day to bring some value to us, to me, to Dan, to Rodney, and to our listeners. So I'm going to put some links in the YouTube and the comments and everything so that we can link to you guys. So if people want to get to know Jerome and Justin a little bit better, they can find you. Where would be a good place for people to get a hold of you guys?
Jerome?
So myersmethods.com. There you can get a free 4-step guide on why we like joint ventures over syndications. And I'm on LinkedIn. Last name is Myers in Greensboro, North Carolina.
And Justin Richards with Grayson Capital Group. You can go to graysoncapitalgroup.com, look us up, and you can check out our social media and everything right from there.
Awesome. Guys, just a huge thanks again. And for the listeners, everybody that's taken a moment out of your time to listen to us, thanks for joining. Hopefully this brought a little bit of value to you, and we'll catch you next week for the next round table.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.